All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Tech Leadership Meetup. It's our final one for the year. Yeah, we've had lots of good events over the year and excited for tonight and our speaker for today. Just a couple of Tech Leadership admin before we kick off with the actual talk. A couple of house rules first. To start with, the event will be recorded. So if you do have any issues with this, please just chat with myself and Roberto, the organizer of the event. As the talk is going on, please keep yourself on mute as any background audio might affect the speaker's talk. And you can unmute yourself if there's questions or chats a bit later. If you have any questions as the talk is going, please feel free to ask questions in the Zoom chat. And then at the end of the talk, we'll ask the speaker the questions so that they can answer. So feel free to drop any questions as the talk is going on in the Zoom chat box. And we also understand that maybe some pressing issues may pop up as you're going along. So you may need to drop off. So feel free to drop off if you need to. As much as we'd love to have you, we understand that you may need to drop off. We'd like to thank our sponsors. They help support our community and help us host events like this and our in-person events. Our first sponsor is Peach Payments. They're a payment processor across Africa. And if you're interested in what they do or interested in their product, please check them out at peachpayments.com. We also are sponsored by OfferZen. They sponsor us with swag. And if you're interested in what OfferZen does, please check them out at offerzen.com. If you're a developer that's looking for a new role, OfferZen could be the platform that helps you to find a new role. And if you're a company that's recruiting engineers, OfferZen will also be a platform that you can use to help you find good and talented engineers. So please check out their platform on offerzen.com. We have a tech leadership newsletter that we release once a month. We'll send you an email with curated tech leadership content that is useful that we found over the month that will help you learn and grow and develop your engineering leadership skills. I'll send out a link after this to the leadership, to a direct link to the newsletter so you can sign up. We say we'll send you one email once a month, and we usually send it out the day of the meetup after the meetup. So there'll be one going out tonight at 8 o'clock, and you can start receiving that. So if you're interested in that, please sign up. And as I said, I'll send out a link for that. We also have a Tech Leadership Twitter space. We are at Tech Leadership X on Twitter. And there we post almost a link once a day that is also curated tech leadership content that is interesting material for you to learn about your engineering leadership. And we also post announcements about future meetups that are coming, such as this one, so you're aware of what's going on. So if you are on Twitter, please check out Tech Leadership X and maybe you can follow us there. As I mentioned, OfferZen is our swag sponsor. So if you are if you are in South Africa and you're joining us for this call, I'll send out a link after I've done the intro. That will be a link to a type form. You can fill in your details, and OfferZen, if you haven't received a swag from them in the last quarter, they will send you a t-shirt, which for free, and that you can wear as OfferZen swag. So thanks to OfferZen for that. And yeah, to the exciting part of this evening, our speaker introduction. So we're excited to welcome James, who's our speaker for this evening. He works as an engineering manager at Reddit. It's based out of Berlin in Germany. And the talk for tonight's title will be a framework for leading with visibility. So without taking too much time, I will hand over the screen share to James to join us and give us the talk for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having me at Tech Leadership Meetup. I'm going to share my screen, and you can just pick it up from there. Okay. All right. I hope you can see my main screen, I mean, the slide screen. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. My name is James, and have been building software for the past 10 years. Previously, I was head of engineering at TIER, leading the growth teams. And at the moment, I am an engineering manager at Reddit. And if you have questions, maybe after today's talk, or there are ideas you want to share, you can always tweet at Samoje Abiodun on Twitter. And today I'm going to be talking about a framework for leading with visibility. Whether you are a manager managing from 2 layers away, or maybe you're an engineering manager managing a single team, you are going to, there's going to be something to pick from this. And at the end of the day, I'm going to take some time to answer any questions you might have. And let's dive in. So for some times, I always developed keen interest in sailing. And if you look at sailing, it's one of the oldest means of transportation. Throughout history, it helped civilization to develop as people sailed from one country, maybe to trade with others or to settle down. Even in our world today, over 90% of the world goods are transported over oceans, waters. But as important as sailing is, one of the most dangerous conditions to navigate a ship is when you have reduced visibility, maybe due to thunderstorms or fog, or maybe heavy rain. So when you have reduced visibility, there is a tendency of collision with objects, or maybe even, it could even be the shoreline. And that is why the main primary responsibility of a navigating officer on duty is to make sure that the ship is safely navigated across different changing weather conditions. Well, I'm not talking about sailing today. I'm actually talking about how you can lead with visibility and the framework of visibility. But I like to compare the job of a manager, or maybe a director or an engineering manager, to that of a sailor who has to lead a team of engineering teams to achieve a business outcome. For example, there's going to be external factors. It could even be engineers' personal lives. It could be economic situation, maybe inflation and all that. All of these will come and affect the team. And the role of a manager will be able to have visibility onto this to be able to manage them. As a manager, you are not going to be dealing with fog. You are going to be dealing with people issues. And all these can affect your team's momentum. You will not deal with dust storms. It's going to be delivery and process issues. You are not going to deal with tidal waves either. And having visibility to all of these is critical for you to be able to stay on top and at the same time manage them effectively. The challenge is the more your team grows, the less you have visibility. If you are leading a team of, let's say, 2 to 4 or 5 engineers, you might even be the glue that bring the teams together. For example, you're hands-on, you know what is happening. You even work directly with the team, feedback, you understand what is happening. But as you grow as an organization, maybe to 10 engineers, to 50 engineers, to 100 engineers and all that, then you get removed from where the actions are happening. You're far away from them. And then it becomes really difficult to have visibility. And feedbacks, when you push changes, feedback of those changes might come days, sometimes even weeks. And this time around, they're already consequential, either positively or negatively. And sometimes you just discover that what you can do when you have 3 people together in a room, it just takes longer because you're now 50 and 100. And there has to be a simple way to be able to understand what really matters. And a lot of information coming in, you need to be able to pick out the one that is important and to be able to manage your time. And this is where I'm going to be spending the second part of my talk today, which is the framework for leading with visibility. So sometimes when I look at what engineering managers do, kind of like group what they do from day to day, from performance management to the coaching sessions you have with your team, or for example, to one-on-ones and everything, you can group all of these into 4 buckets. Everything you do is going to revolve around process, operation, people, and product. And these are the 4 main pillars that I think you should get both quantitative and qualitative data from to be able to have visibility into your teams. Why do we even need a manager? When we look at the main goal of a manager, your roles and responsibility might be different. Even within the same company, you might have an engineering manager doing something different from another engineering managers, because what we do can be dictated by the needs of the teams that you are leading. For every one of us, every manager has one outcome, one goal. The main goal is to get better outcomes from the people they are leading, get better results from the people they are leading. And to be able to get better outcomes from the people you are leading, there are 3 things you need to do. First, you need to understand the state of that team. What state are they in right now? And you need to understand what to remove to make them effective or better than they are. And you also need to understand what you need to add to the team to make them better than they are. All of these revolves around visibility. So to lead with visibility, I think every manager, you need to understand how your team is building what they are building within the time frame that you have and within the budget that you have. This is what I call process. There's a chance that you won't have all the time in the world and maybe not all the budget in the world. This is always limited. It's always a constraint that we have. So you need to be able to adapt. How is my team doing what they are doing within the time that we have and within the budget that we have? And the second part is operation. Understand if what has been built will continue to run. And why it is important, we don't build software and just forget about it. No, we need to make that incremental updates. We always maintain it. So you need to be able to get data at some point that will tell you the state of what has been built in production environment. And the next one is people. The team that you are leading, the people building this, are they engaged? Are they happy to continue building this stuff that's being built? And the last one is the product, which is the end users that you are building for. Are they getting satisfaction? Are they getting value from what is being built? So I'm going to zoom over some of these 4 pillars right now. When I talk to people about process, I usually hear something like, oh, come on, I'm not a process person. I don't like process. I just go with the flow. But the truth is that there's always a process. As long as you do things, there's a process. Process is the way you habitually do things. If your company is about making pizzas for people, the process of turning that raw material to something that is edible, delivered to the user, is the process, the how you do things. And when it comes to software development, you might not have a thoughtfully designed or intentional process, but there's always one. And because there's a constraint of time and on budget, you need to know if the process you have is enabling your team to be more effective or is drawing them back, is impeding them. So how do you understand process? To understand process, you first need to know where they spend their time and what really affects execution. For example, if you look at your architecture code base where engineers are working in, does it allow your teams to go as fast as possible? In one of my experiences, sometimes we realize at that company that if they split our architecture into microservice architecture, if we don't split the monolith into smaller microservices, there is no way our teams are able to be productive. So we invested into the code base, kind of like break it down. And then we got to a point, we realized that what is actually a service? Can we break them smaller? And at the same time, make it easy to deliver business value as fast as possible. Another one is the developer experience. How fast can teams build, scale, deploy services easily? Do they have to build something and enhance it over to QA? QA will do some testing on them, then send it back to another team. Another team will do something and send it back. So all of these influence process, how your team is building what they're building on time and within budget. Another one is the autonomy. Are teams empowered to figure out the solution to the problem they have? Or do they really get solution and problems dictated to them from above? Can they kind of like, this is the KPI we want to move, and this is how we want to do it? Do they have autonomy to do all this? And what does collaboration looks like across different functions? Does everyone have a shared understanding of what is being built? All of these are areas you can look at to understand process. So how do you keep a pulse on process? One of the most effective ways that I found is through one-on-ones. One-on-ones, when used, it can be a place to build trust with your reports. It can also be a place to pick a lot of signals of things going well or going wrong. If you are managing from 2 layers away, I encourage you to have skip level one-on-ones. There's a lot of information. When a team is constantly missing deadline, they commit to something and then they are unable to deliver. There might be a chance that there's something wrong with their process. Are they meeting surprises along the way? Does that mean they are not investing in proper technical discovery before committing or executing? All of these, through one-on-one, you can pick things that are going well, things that you need to, that are not going well. Another one that I've seen very valuable to keep a person process is DORA metrics. And when it comes to measuring productivity, there are a lot of opinions around it. And at the same time, there have been organizations who attempted to like measure developers' productivity, and they did it wrong and it backfired. And there are also some organizations that say, okay, we are not going to measure anything. We just leave it. So, but one thing that I've learned is that developers' productivity cannot be reduced to a single metric or a single dimension. And one way that I've seen very effective is to track DORA metrics. And what is DORA metrics? It more or less like 4 key metrics that came after 6 years of research at Google on how high-performing teams, you measure their own performance. And the first one is deployment frequency. How fast, how frequent is the team delivering values to users? And another one is the lead time for changes. How long does it take us to kind of like get these changes or to the user? So in one of my, in a tier, so we will measure all of these across board. And once every 2 weeks, I will sit down with my team. We will look at these metrics together. So when I see deployment frequency going down, I will ask them, what is happening around this place? What is happening to deployment frequency? Are we investing in, incremental changes, deployment, production environment? And sometimes I kind of like pick a lot of information of where I can support my team by asking all of these questions. In one of the meetings, it got to a point, then we realized that we were seeing the change fail rate was going higher than normal. And I wanted to know why. Then we realized that we had a problem with the tooling we used to put code to production environment. Because we had a metric and then we can see how it's in part the engineering team, it was easy to prioritize with the development and developer experience team. And when I also see deployment frequency going up or one of these metrics going up, I also want to know why. What are we doing differently? Are we getting better at incrementally delivering changes? And when I see gold going down, it's also an opportunity to ask questions. Why is it going down? What can we do better? And the last one, to keep a pulse on process, is running engineering surveys. Most organizations, they do have a way of getting engagement, for example, usually run by HR, to understand how engaged are the employees. And one thing that I've seen, this is very good and valuable, but sometimes they are too general to kind of capture what is happening across different functions, especially when it comes to engineering. So one effective way that I've seen to understand what is the best thing or what is the most effective thing you can kind of tackle to enable your team is by sending anonymous engineering surveys, maybe every quarter or monthly or yearly. For example, you might find out that backend teams are super happy with their release process. Sometimes Android engineers might even be super happy about their deployment or release process as well. And only to find out that iOS engineers are not happy. Sometimes it could even be a fraction of that senior iOS engineers that are not happy, who have experienced better release process from a different company. So by kind of like sending surveys to understand what are the pain point that you're experiencing, how easy it is to find and access documentation. Another thing that I've seen is that when you are working with a company, you might discover that existing engineers, they have all the information. They have all the context about all the decisions that have been made. But new engineers that are coming in, still onboarding, they might be asking why. Why is this thing like this? Because they don't have all this context. So existing engineer might not see anything wrong with documentation, but new ones might find something wrong with it. So by kind of like sending surveys to understand what processes are useful, which ones should we remove, how is the tooling you are using, which one is stable, what can we improve, you are able to get tons of information on how your team is building what they are building within the time and you have on budget. The second pillar is the operation. So in software, we don't build and forget. We build, we maintain. Gone are the days where you have to like spend 1 year writing software. Nobody sees what you are building. You're just building it. And after 1 year, you have big bang release. And then you send it to your customer and then you forget. No, we build every 2 weeks. We make changes. We learn from the customer. We kind of like maintain what we build. And this is why your operation is important. You need to be able to understand the state of what has been built. And if your organization is growing rapidly, there are two ways for you to know that you are growing, two main ways. You kind to see that complexity will start to increase. Maybe as a small company, you started a product supporting just one use case. But now you're learning more, you are expanding to new market, you are adding more use cases. Complexity will start to set into your code base. And at the same time, the rate at which you are making changes will also become really high. So you are growing massively, you are hiring, there are more engineers who are making changes. And at the same time, you are learning new things about new users. You want to expand to new market. They want something differently. And then you want to make changes as well. And the more you make changes, the risk of something getting broken in the production environment. And when you grow this fast, a lot of things will go under pressure. Communication will break down, collaboration might even break down, and even your culture will start to break down because you are bringing in people in who are growing. But for engineering team, you see that reliability and performance will start to go under pressure. It is this time that you start to experience some outages. You discover that your system is unable to support the amount of traffic that is coming at it at this point in time. And my team in one of my in previous job was in this state. As we were growing higher, we will get to a point where we will experience an outage. We are trying to recover from one outage and then we will enter another one. So it's more or less like taking a step forward and then 2 steps backward to kind of like quench the fire in the production environment. And there was one thing that I realized that time, that when your systems are going to fail, some of the time you will know. You don't fail suddenly. You don't just experience an outage suddenly. You know gradually and then suddenly. For example, you will know if we don't do this migration, if we don't move from this database, and we continue to grow like this, in 6 months, this will not be able to support us. And this is a good thing because you're able to like track reliability metric that can help you balance your investment. And this is why you need to be running your services with service level objectives, SLO. So SLO is more or less like the goals that you set for how much reliability you expect out of a system. And SLIs, they are more or less like key measurements that allow you to determine how reliable the services or your system is. And SLA is more or less like the contract. What will happen if the system does not meet its SLO? For example, let's say you're building a system that allows users to be able to register. So your SLO could be 99.9% of the time, every user's attempt to register on this system must be successful. And if it is not successful, your SLA will be, this is what will happen. For example, it could be, we will pause new feature development and then make sure that we are meeting this SLO again before we start. So by combining the concept of SLO and error budget, where you have a specific error budget policy, you are able to get data that allows you to know how you are doing when it comes to keeping what you have built running and working for customers. And mind you, don't just measure availability and latency. You need to measure something that directly affects your users in their journey. It's their experience you want to measure. You don't want to just measure, for example, how available or latency. They are good, but make sure you are measuring something that affects your users in their journey as they use your application. And the third pillar that I want to talk about is people. And no matter how great your plans are, for example, it is people that are going to execute it. No matter how massive your roadmap is, it is people that are going to execute it. And when I see what managers or leaders do around people, I see we hire, we kind of like find the right people and kind of like assemble a team. And at the same time, when we hire, we don't stop. We kind of like grow these people we've brought together. And we tend to like make sure, are they working well together? And we kind of like design things they are working on day to day and make sure it gets them to where they want to get in the future. And then the last one is retaining them, making sure they're happy, working on what they are working on. And these can be very, very tough to crack. So one thing leaders need to get visibility on to be able to understand is, are the people building what we are building? Are they happy? And do they want to continue building this stuff with us? And to be able to do this, you need to get data on things that drives engagement. There have been a lot of post research on what really makes engineers engage or employees engage. And a couple of them is the autonomy. For example, can they decide how they want to do their work to an extent? For example, today, for example, engineer might say, okay, we want to have an option to work remotely from home. And we also want to have an option to work from the office. Can they decide to an extent how they want to get the work they are doing done? Do they have a say on it? And at the same time, purpose. How connected are they to the goals and purpose of the organization? Do they believe that the direction set by the senior leadership is leading the company in the right direction? So I know we do have this hiring, this specific, we do check for this specific during hiring managers interview. For example, you might say, hey, why did you apply to our organization? Why should we hire you? But this does not have to stop when you are trying to hire. You also need to make sure you keep checking. Are these people still interested in us? Are they still motivated? Do they still want to continue working with us? And another one is growth. Can engineers see the path for growth in the organization? Do they know what to do to get to the next step? And are they getting regular feedback from their managers how they are doing regarding this? Another one is recognition. How do your team members, your engineers, your report, how do they feel about being fairly recognized for the contribution they bring? Do they feel like if they do great work, they are going to be recognized for that? And what do they think about compensation? Do they believe they are fairly rewarded for the kind of values they bring? And not only that, can they have constructive and fair conversation with their managers about pay. And another one is the challenging one. You want to make sure that your team, what they are working on, keeps them challenged and they are learning from it. Are they working on something that is challenging them, making them to discover new things, learn new things? I know this can be very hard because there are times you won't have challenging work, but do you have the right balance of work that keeps them challenged and makes them grow? So how do you keep a pulse on this? And one way that I've seen is by performing regular engagement checks through anonymous survey again. And this one, you can specifically get what do they feel? Maybe you have a number from 1 to 10. How do they feel about autonomy right now? And how do they feel about compensation, recognition, and all that? So to give you, in one of my experience, in one of my teams, when after COVID, and there was this massive inflation, a lot of things were going, and there've been a lot of report of companies increasing engineers' compensation. And when I look at my report at that point in time, I started seeing compensation really going low, very low. So, and this became an issue. And by looking at this, I was able to understand, to push forward to ask people, what is the problem with compensation? Some people are open enough to come to their manager, hey, can I get an increase? Hey, this is the problem. Right? Some might not even come forward. But by seeing this data, you are able to know, hey, this is something that needs to be addressed. So a couple of tools that I've seen that can help is, one of them is called Peakon, and the other one is a culture app. This can allow you to automatically send surveys to your engineers, and it will help you to aggregate all the scores to see which drivers needs attention and which one does not. So the last one today is the product. So it is possible to have a super engaged team, and at the same time, they are super engaged and they're happy building what they are building. They're super motivated. They just want to build it. And you can even have what they are building running perfectly in production with all the scalability and reliability you can think of. And at the end of the day, you can have users that are not happy, especially when you are solving the wrong problem for your users. So you need to be able to understand how users feel about your product. Are they actually getting values from what they are building? And are they enjoying using it? And to do this, you need to measure metrics that directly correspond to users' experience. Don't just measure revenue metrics or maybe business metrics. You need to measure metrics that can tell you what users are experiencing with your product. And one way that I've seen is to use a Google Health framework, which allows you to measure happiness. For example, what do users feel when they use your product? Do they find fun in it? Do they find it fun and easy to use? And when you do this, what does their engagement look like? Are users engaging with your product? Do they move from one page to another? Are they engaging with new features that you are adding? And another one is adoption. What percentage of new users are landing on the website or probably installing the application you have and going through onboarding process to become regular users? So if you notice a drop off somewhere, maybe there's something you are doing wrong. Maybe there's something you are not doing well before. Maybe you deviated from something. And another thing is retention. You want to look at what percentage of these users that are becoming regular users are returning back. Are they continuously using the product? And if they are subscribing to something, are they renewing subscription on a monthly basis or weekly basis or yearly basis, depending on what it is? And finally, you want to look at tax sources. So users are using your product because it is helping them to get something done. So you want to know how quickly and easily they can get that thing done. So by looking at all of these key points, you're able to understand users' experience across your product. So I'm going to wrap up right now, but if you are going to take anything from this talk today, it should be that you need to get both quantitative, qualitative data from the people that you have assembled your team. How do they feel? Are they happy to continue building what they are building? And at the same time, you need to know what users feel about what you are building. Are they getting values from it? And another one is the process. You need to know how your team is doing what they are doing within the time that you have and within the budget. And another one is operation. You need to be able to know the state of things that has been built in production environment. And why do you need to know all this? To be able to drive change, to be able to get better outcomes from your team, to be able to drive improvement. And finally, you should know that numbers don't tell the whole story sometimes. So you don't just look at deployment frequency going down and say, hey, you must meet 20 deployments a week. Why is it going down? You need to support some metrics with personal interviews. So you've seen something wrong, talk to your engineers. Hey, what is happening? How can I help you? You see something wrong with the product, talk to your users. Hey, why are you not renewing subscription? Why are you not coming back? And at the same time, when you see metrics that don't meet expectation, use it as a coaching opportunity. For example, you see change fail rate going so low, and or maybe you see deployment frequency, engineers are building that thing for 1 week, and only after 1 week they deploy to production. You want to use this as a coaching opportunity, why they need to like develop and deliver value incrementally. Maybe why they need to break massive pull requests into smaller one, why they need to batch their changes. You want to use metrics that don't meet expectation as a coaching opportunity. And finally, start, tune, and refine. In addition to this, I also run a newsletter called Effective Software Leads. You can scan this QR code and just sign up. And yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, James, for all that insight. Yeah, I really found it valuable, especially I think the idea of just measuring how you're doing and how you're performing as a team and even as an individual is very important in everyone's career and companies and teams' progress. Because I think we find lots of people and lots of companies almost living in a space where you do work and you continue doing work, and you, in some cases, maybe you assume you're doing very well, but you're not so certain, because how do you know that? And in some cases, maybe people feel they're struggling or they're doing badly when they're actually doing very well, when they could be exposing all these numbers to help them make decisions. And coming from an engineering field where data and numbers are supposed to be part of our first principles, it's amazing how so many companies and places are not adopting these approaches. So yeah, thank you for bringing them to our community and sharing them with us. And yeah, I really like the way you split them into the different pillars that you can look at. And it was very complete. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm sure everyone has found it quite insightful. There are a couple of questions that we have for you. Perhaps we can address those, then we can get to the wrapping up part of the meetup. I think Roberto's got the first one there with so I think when you're speaking about the DORA metrics, so regarding the DORA metrics, do you have ways to automatically generate these metrics, or do you have to gather these by hand? And if you're automating these metrics, are you using in-house tools to gather the metrics, or are there tools you leverage to get these metrics?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for DORA metrics, at that point in time, we were using an in-house tool that was built internally. But if you are probably a small organization, it might maybe you don't want to invest in building your own internal tool. I think there are a couple of tools that can help you. A couple of companies offering products that allows you to track DORA metrics pretty well. I think one of them could be Swamia. I just put it in the chat. This might also a couple of days. Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Does that answer your question, Roberto, there?
100%. That's exactly what I was looking for, because tracking these by hand has been very difficult.
Yeah, I think there's also linear B. That's also another one I've heard, and so it's an interesting question, because I do think it also depends on what internal tools you use for your processes, and then if any of the tools, if you're going to buy a tool, whether it's integrated with those tools and things like that. All right, and then I also had a question around how do you, everything around tracking and getting numbers surfaced is all good and comes from a right place in mind for most, I guess, people in leadership positions. But from the other perspective, sometimes you can have situations where engineers feel like they're being like this big brother policing them, or the numbers get used to micromanage them. So it's like, last week you managed to deploy 10 times, this week, or how come you did 5 this time, So how do you sort of deal with situations where maybe engineers are resistant or are sort of asking the questions around, do we need these numbers, because they might be getting used to judge us, our performance, and make us work as robots?
That's really an interesting questions. Because when you tell an engineer, hey, we're going to start measuring your deployment frequency, it sounds to them like, oh, this is how your performance will be judged. And this is when they think about, okay, when I do a technical discovery that's not reflected anywhere, are you saying I'm not working on? So I think the main part is confusing engineer that this is not about performance. This is just for diagnosis purposes. For example, how can we get better at what we are doing? For example, is anything blocking you? For example, if we discover that we're having so many change fail rate, we deploy changes to production environment, and then it's a broken code. So it's just for us to know the system that allows that. It's not about who did it, but it's not about the individual, but the process itself. So how can we make sure we reduce this? So by letting engineers, this is not about performance. This is just about how I can better support you, how to be able to see things that are blockers, things that are blocking you. For example, one way, when we first started at that point, a couple of people kicked back about it, but we tend to make it clear, this is not about performance. For example, when we see that deployment frequency is slowing down, we want to ask questions. Our engineer probably spending time on things that don't lead to deployment frequency. And probably this is what engineers want to know, because they want to write that code, right? They want to put it into production. How can I help you so that you actually spend time doing what you are doing best, what you like to do? So by using this, not like, hey, you must maintain deployment frequency. Hey, your change must not fail when it goes into production, to shift into this is for me to know where I can better support you. I think by changing that mindset, it works in this way.
All right. Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Thanks a lot for answering. We have 2 more from Roberto. One is, besides one-to-ones and surveys, are there any other ways to gather insights regarding employee engagement or happiness?
For this has been the main tools that I use is through one-on-ones, and at the same time through surveys. There are things that I don't get through one-on-one that I see through surveys as well. And these are just pointers for me to know, hey, this is something that I need to address. This is what is affecting engineers that I need to address. And these are the 2 primary ways that I use at the moment.
All right. And the final one is, where in the flow do you think about gathering insights? Say you're building a new feature, do you decide what you would like to measure at the planning phase already, or is that typically decided once the feature is released? Secondly, how long do you measure a thing? Is there such a thing as measuring too many things for too long?
Yeah, so I will start with the first question. We say, when do you decide what you would like to measure? At the planning phase already? Yes, most of the time it's better to decide what kind of insight do we need for this thing we want to build. When we already conceive an idea of the features we want to build, like we want to build this, then we should already have in mind that this is the kind of data we need to get to know that this is successful. So we should already have what we need to do, the data that will tell us whether this fails or is success. And I think it's better to do this at the planning phase and not when you already put the code in production. So, and then on the second one, how long do you measure a thing? Is there such a thing as measuring too many things for too long? So there are two ways that I approach this. So everything is an experiment, based on my opinion. If you are building something new that has not been used by users before, you don't know what the outcome, you don't know what users are going to, you don't know what their reactions are going to be. So at that point in time, you want to like measure as many things as possible that will allow you to know that this is something, that will allow you to know if it is positively received or negatively received. And when you already find the answer, okay, this is a feature that we want to invest more because it's driving the right metrics, it's moving the right KPI. And this time you can turn into a feature. And maybe some of the things you were collecting while you are still experimenting, you don't need to collect them anymore. And you make, for example, a good example could be if you are building a new way for users to authenticate into your app, maybe you already have other logins, but right now you want to add single sign-on. It's an experiment. You want to get as much data as possible. Do users really like it? Is it really driving retention, engagement, and so on? And once you have already decided you've had that insight, then it turns to a feature. And you might want to scale back some of this data that you are collecting when you are still experimenting.
Right. Roberto, happy?
Yes, very happy. Thank you very much.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you so much for answering the questions, James. And yeah, once again, thank you so much for joining our community and delivering the talk for us tonight. As is customary from our tech leadership community, we give our guest speakers a gift of a book of their choice. So that book is sponsored by Benny, who's our co-organizer, who's actually not here today, his company called Matchbox Solutions. So Benny will be in touch after the meetup to just find out what book you're interested in and what format to get it to you in. And that's just as a sort of way to say thank you for taking out your time and chatting to us today. And then just to wrap up from the tech leadership side of things, thanks once again to our sponsors, Peach Payments at OfferZen, for supporting us throughout the year. And yeah, with OfferZen and the swag, if you scroll up to the message I sent earlier in the chat, if you haven't sort of saved that link, you can use it to get some swag from OfferZen afterwards. And thank you for everyone who's joined us over the year and supported all the meetups. We'll be continuing once again next year with more exciting talks and venues and events that we'll be hosting. So from us, from the tech leadership community side, happy holidays to everyone, and we'll all see you next year. Thank you for joining. Cheers.
Thank you.